Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Disaster Lifecycle Clusters breakout session, Trusted Data Before, During, and After Disaster, the Trusted Data Now initiative. I'm Maggie Glasgow. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster, joined by Dave Jones, the co-chair, and our new ESIP Community Fellow, Gabby Brown. So welcome to the session, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, just some logistics, as you all know, in the online meeting age. Mute yourself if you're not speaking, and turn on your camera when you're talking. I've included the bit.ly URL for our meeting notes. If you could please sign in with your name, organization, pronouns, location, and email. And we'll be using this document sort of throughout the session here to record thoughts about what we'll be discussing. And of course, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, or feel free to engage us in conversation. So Dave, did you want to talk to this slide?
Sure. We've been talking for quite a while within the ESIP Disaster Lifecycle Cluster about trusted data and how data reaches decision makers. And so, we're very interested in that stream and very interested in how data is accessed and used. So we know we have data collection systems, radar, satellites, river gauges, sensors. That goes all into processing and quality control, and then gets distributed through various networks throughout from NOAA, particularly in these cases, to emergency operations centers, alert systems like IPAWS, which also does WEA alerts and emergency notification platforms. In some cases, decision makers, emergency managers, and public officials, but not all cases. One of the issues is, and we have lots of turnover in the emergency management and decision-making arenas, where people just are not familiar at all where certain data comes from. And that's critical when it comes to talking about lifelines and power being cut off and data sources being cut off. And then, once it goes out through these WEA notifications, perhaps like watches and warnings, mostly WEA is warnings, life-threatening alerts, goes out through smartphones and no weather radio, and carries any alerts, watches, warnings, advisories that the Weather Service issues. And then, is there action taken on those, or is there confusion? And we've had a lot of issues over the years on data sets being issued, warnings being issued with not great actionable language that's improving now with social science. Or is there, even more confusion when they see text-based products or they see geospatial products and people don't know they can click on them? So the next best option here that we're talking about is get people access and trust the data. So information needs to be spatially visualized to orient people, and the hazard should deliver those instructions. And that's what we're about here in the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster, to put more data to work so it can support decision-making, support situational awareness. It may not be the number one area where people go to, but it is a choice. And we're very interested in making sure that particularly non-traditional decision makers, ones that don't have to worry about this every day, can access science data sets and understand what they mean. And that's a big barrier right now. And so our real goal is moving data from sensors and models to decision makers in the public in near real time, really making sure that it does it in such a way that they can take action, and it makes it into trusted delivery systems within companies or within organizations. So by that, it really means through web services, other types of geospatial products, so they can go and get displayed as soon as the Weather Service hits enter, as soon as data sets are available from from satellite sources. There's a new system that's been developed at NOAA called NGFS, the Next Generation Fire System, for using the GOES satellite data, using various channels on GOES to identify hot pixels, and then sending alerts out right away. In some cases, that capability has led to someone calling 911 before 911 gets called locally from somebody. So seeing a hotspot on the satellite. So, Maggie?
Yep. Sorry. I have to.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So I'm very pleased to welcome our two speakers today, Claire Sturm and Bandana Carr. Here is some interesting background information on our two speakers, and I think I will go ahead and invite them to give their presentations, and then we can move on to the discussion about the Trusted Data Now initiative and the work that we've been doing in creating a community-curated resource for sharing data for decision makers and other workers in the disasters arena, to be able to find these resources in sort of one place, a one-stop shop, if you will. So, Claire, I'm going to go ahead and have you take over the share so that you can give us your presentation, and maybe you can give a few words about who you are, and I will stop sharing and go on mute.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and really excited to be here to communicate with you all. I will say, just to get started, a little bit about myself. I'm a project manager by training and community lead of the Wildfire Science and Technology Commons. And this is an initiative that has been led by the Societal Computing and Innovation Lab out of UC San Diego. And this is really a community effort. So we've had a lot of great partners and working group members that I want to highlight as well that have made all of this possible. And we continue to extend it as well to meet the community needs. So a little bit into, why we are here looking at wildfire, especially in the hazard space. We're here because we care about our communities and making sure that they get the right resources at the right time in order to make the best decisions. And our practitioners, especially those working on the front lines with fire and combating fire, has been a place where our team at UC San Diego has been working with them for over the past decade. We've understood the complexity of handling wildfire and wildland risks, and that we have a lot of fragmented data and models that can help inform us, but making those cohesive and interoperable is a big challenge. There's also a lack of shared standards and practices throughout the community of assets, so making those interoperable is also a barrier. And adopting new technologies, especially technologies that are coming out of our private sector, can be a challenge too, because we are looking at them more in a black box. We don't know how they were trained. We don't know what data was used in order to build those analyses. So it can be a challenge for especially the practitioners to have that trust that this is a solution that's going to give the right recommendations at the right time. So the Wildfire Commons is really designed to be that cohesive place for enabling the community to identify who is a part of this community, who has expertise, and how we can interconnect in order to learn from each other, looking at it from the lens of our creators, our innovators, and making them more accessible to the open products that we have, and also reusing products that have been established for the practice of understanding fire and its behaviors, and also looking at the cross-analysis of these products. You can do a lot of great Googling, you can do a lot of great word of mouth about what products are available, but it can definitely be a challenge of cross-comparing what solutions work best for a community, especially on the practitioner side of the house. So we're here to be an integrator of these solutions, and it's not meant to replace the great work that folks have already done, but really to be that centralized connection point to all of the various assets and products that we have available to us. So going into the Wildfire Commons, we have 3 core components, I will say, in my tech hat wearing. But what it really means is there's 3 different areas in which you can engage. The Expert Network tool, which I'll talk a little bit more about, FireForge, which is that innovators platform, and the community marketplace, where we can have that shared space to list our available products that are ready for community use. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, this is really driven by community recommendations and future community recommendations. We've had a great set of working groups over the past 9 months that have been advising us on how to extend the Wildfire Commons and the focus of standardization, looking at scale across the community, adoption within the broader community, and also looking at our marketplace on how we list these products in a usable fashion. We have pathfinders that illustrate how they are using the Wildfire Commons to enable our community practitioners and researchers to kind of fit themselves in the shoes of others and see how things can be utilized to benefit their work. Case study communities to enable us to dig deeper into a specific topic. Right now, we're launching our digital twin case study community, which is supported by google.org. And this will enable the future development of a back-end ecosystem for additional modeling and mapping. We have data challenges to enable our early workforce community members, especially students, to get hands-on with the available data and open assets that are available. And a community forum, which I do want to call out, especially in this space, because it is tied with AidArena, and that is also a management and hazards discussion forum that we're able to participate in. So going into the Expert Network, and this is something that I would encourage everyone here to take an action towards. So it's primarily the way that you can start utilizing the Wildfire Commons. It's a simple sign-in that allows you to select your institutional credits to sign in, or you can use OrcID or Google in order to authenticate as well. I would encourage you to use OrcID or your institutional authentication because it allows you to have more access to compute resources that we're making available through our partners. The FireForge platform is that next step. It allows you to look at our curated catalog. It's mainly a metadata catalog of all of our assets within the community, the data, the models, the tools that we're utilizing in order to do our exploration. We have a custom workspace that's also tapped into this platform that allows you to build all these items into one single space, sharing the use of how you did your analysis and ability to share it with other colleagues as well, so they can perform their own analysis or work on reproducibility. And we know that being able to look at this can be frustrating, especially when we're doing it on our own. We're doing those Google searches, trying to do some bookmarks. We're in meetings, taking notes, asking colleagues for their zip files. And maybe it might be the latest way that they did some processing towards satellite data for a data layer. And of course, attending these great conferences where maybe it might be an unfortunate point where a QR code isn't working quite as well as we hoped. And this all leads to self-managed data, which then we're trying to extract and further use through APIs or half-built scripts to eventually get to a compute-ready state and eventually have our output and analysis. So for our innovators that are trying to go through this workflow for their own modeling, their own data analysis, for their own work, the FireForge is a location where you can have discovery. You can also input the items that you are caring about or have been supporting over the years into the curated catalog. You can also then collect them into that workspace to share with a colleague, access the compute that's available through the platform, and be able to have that product be ready for the community. And through an extended partnership that we have for a national resource, you can also store it without any cost to you. So a little interface walkthrough. We have the ability to set up these workspaces. This is just a little visual of me selecting a few data sets and running a script that I have in GitHub. And really this script is just going to look at some compiled data layers on what was the climate and how was it forecasted during that day as it impacted a fire. I'm able to select other data sets that are curated within our community catalog and select what compute resources I need. So there's the flexibility here for you to extend that to meet your compute analysis requirements. And of course, I end up with this lovely working space that's supported through Jupyter Notebooks. It's a Jupyter Hub that we have on our backend. And if folks would like additional walkthrough, especially if you have a use case that you would like to describe to us and have our team help work with you on, we have office hours that we're always happy to meet and have this one-on-one to talk about the platform further. And of course, for our innovators that have product-ready versions, they're already being utilized by practitioners or by other colleagues. We have this marketplace where we list curated and ready-to-use products. They can be interagency dashboards talking about treatment plans. They can be open access programs to weather data stations. And we have the ability to do tagging to illustrate how they can be used, highlight those that are in top use at the top of the marketplace itself. And of course, the most important feature of all, illustrate how they can be used using the compute available within the Wildfire Commons. So you can take these great examples and directly launch compute-ready analysis for you to look at some example data sets before you dive into the direct program itself or the tool itself. So how to join the marketplace? I mentioned earlier that we have a registration space for these tools, containers, and services. We even have metadata for our AI models that are listed here. And we encourage you to submit those and recommend them to join the marketplace. And we'll be able to highlight how others can utilize these products through this space. And as I mentioned, I would be remiss not to highlight our partners. They've really been the backbone in order to explain and emphasize how the community is currently using these services and solutions and where the integration and interoperability needs to come into play to have these interactions between our solutions to enable our practitioners to be better informed and better ready for these high-risk situations. And we have a small but mighty team as well at UCSD that's backing this effort. So excited to have them available to work with all of you and answer any questions or recommendations for feedback on how we can improve the Commons together. And with that, I'll say thank you to everybody and leave with a little bit of a how to participate slide for all the great call to actions I mentioned throughout the process. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Claire. I'm going to hold questions until the discussion portion. So either if you have questions for Claire, please put them in the chat or keep them in mind when we get to the discussion portion of the session. And I apologize. I was remiss in not mentioning that we are sort of co-sponsoring this with the wildfire cluster. And so Dave is also co-chair of that. And I also saw that Douglas has signed in. So I just wanted to welcome our colleagues from that cluster. And in the meantime, I want to welcome Bandana Kar to speak a little bit about AI and other functions of trusted data. So I will turn that over to you, Bandana, if you want to give a few words about who you are, and then go ahead and just jump right into your discussion.
Thanks, Maggie. I think let me. Okay, everyone. I'm assuming you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Vandana Kar. I'm a senior scientist at the National Laboratory of the Rockies, previously known as the National Renewable Energy Lab. So thanks, Maggie, for having me here in this session. And my presentation is going to be a little bit different than how Clara presented her work. I'm literally taking the word of Trusted Data Initiative and how to address the usage of these data sets before, during, and after disasters from a replicability and reproducibility perspective. And
Bandana, real quick, can you switch to slideshow and then we'll be able to see your presentation better?
It is not showing in slideshow?
Oh, it might be showing your screen instead of the slideshow. I don't know. I think in in PowerPoint you can switch the presentation to show just the slides or just slideshow.
Yeah, that's what I tried, but it is not doing the slideshow for me. Okay, let me go to the slideshow mode.
I apologize.
Sorry about that. It's always something.
Now we're still seeing your screen. Oh,
let me try it again.
There should be in your slideshow menu. I think there's an option there to just show slides, or because you have two screens, I take it.
Yes, that's always a challenge.
Yeah. So
I apologize for that. Because this one is supposed to be in a slideshow mode, but for some reason, when I'm sharing it, it is not showing you the slideshow mode. What about now?
You're not sharing.
Nope.
Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Yay.
Okay. Sorry about that. Having 3 monitors does not help. Sometimes I have to look for my mouse as well. So my trusted data issue goes there. So as I mentioned, and I'm looking at it from the kind of work I do, primarily my work is in the risk resilience domain space using data sets from sensors, geospatial data sets, as well as non-spatial data sets, and looking at risk resilience of the critical infrastructures, primarily energy and transportation networks, as well as bringing in the built environment and the social system. So the presentation I'm going to give is basically setting the stage, not necessarily the discussion. So over the years, as I'm assuming everybody nowadays, resiliency has become a buzzword, but those of us who work in this space, and thanks for Dev setting the stage for IPAWS. I used to work on risk communication. Often resiliency is a multidimensional thing. We think about one or the other, but generally we not necessarily take into account the interaction of multiple dimensions at the same time frame. So from social to economic, ecological aspects, environmental, then institutional and policy that often influences how resilient we are or not. The physical and infrastructure conditions, if your infrastructure is not resilient enough, then of course your restoration and recovery time is going to be longer, and the organizations that play a role in ensuring the coordination and adaptation of changes. So in that context, it is also multi-scalar. Not just cross-cutting. Sometimes some of us, we just look at the individual resilience, and if we are in the public health sector, generally individual resilience plays a bigger role, understanding the health conditions, as well as in case of family and household resilience during the economic aspect focus to understand how fast specific households will recover after an event. Then, of course, community and city resilience plays a bigger role as we think about the broader changes in regulatory standards and policies and guidelines to ensure long-term recovery is not going to be decades long. So if we think about this, so where are we in this time frame today where AI is playing a big role? Over the last decades, we have seen there has been a change, Industrial Revolution 4.0, that has taken us to using big data from all these different sources. And I'll get to the point, why am I talking about all these sources, the multiple scales and dimensions. All these sources to develop solutions such as apps and dashboards, and CyberGIS and CLAIRE already mentioned some of the work they were doing in the wildfire era. Then and of course, AI and machine learning, that is something we all are aware of, and now AI has become the focus area in many cases. And that leads me to the current stage where we are. We are trying to converge all these technologies with an intent to empower society so that they can take appropriate actions to ensure long-term resilience and sustainability is achievable. And that means creating digital twin using Gen AI, as well as advanced robotics and bots. And Clara mentioned some of the AI work and the reproducibility work aspect they focus on. So where does it take me? These are the data sources that I'm assuming all of us use: geospatial, AI, and social media. They all have their positives and negatives, but I'm going to focus on the issues that impact a lot more when I think about the solution space. In geospatial analytics, we have to be aware of the scaling issues. The data sets we get from different sources, irrespective, I'm not talking about just the imagery world, but any place, they come at the different spatial and temporal resolutions. And of course, if we add the spectral component, they have different resolutions there. So we have to account how to conflate them together without losing the essence of what the data is supposed to be representing. We also need to be aware of the location privacy issues in case of fine resolution data sets. That leads me to the issue we have with artificial intelligence. Yes, it is excellent in repetitive tasks, high performance, it is quick as we deal with big data, but it can be computationally intensive. Think about the downstream stakeholders who we are trying to empower. Is it a possibility for them to use AI or the AI products? They tend to be expensive, and we have seen with the discussion about data centers, so they require large-scale data as well. They lack any transparency and they fail to capture processes. Unless we understand the processes, it's very difficult to use AI to develop any solutions, because we need to understand what the proxy data sets may be used if we have missing data. Then, of course, social media, it is still playing a role, although Twitter was the main source of data for many research in my world of resilience. But nowadays, other social media data sets can be used, but they are significant source of misinformation and disinformation, and the data that we generate and leverage can be erroneous and they lack accuracy. So when we talk about trusted data, what are the challenges? Is the trusted data means just thinking about having my data to be used quickly without processing by someone who does not have the skill set? Then in that case, we need to prepare decision-ready data. Is it just understanding that they have access to certain data and models? Are the products action-oriented rather than just research-focused, answering specific questions? Because if they are answering questions, but the models are not going to provide any information for developing appropriate action, then they probably are not going to be useful. Then often the societal aspect and the technology aspect, there can be a gap, and there are ethical risks. So there are opportunities, and these opportunity areas is probably where the Trusted Data Initiative can play a big role, is to not just think about open data and open science, but making sure the data sets and the models that are developed using those data sets are accurate, trustworthy, ethical, and reliable. There are also that we need to have standards and protocols for these data sets and models, so that someone who is not equipped in using specific data set is not going to spend a lot of time understanding how they should be combined together, what kind of fusion techniques they need to deploy. They also need to be centric solutions. often we don't think about because the solution is human-centric or not. For instance, if we are developing a cooling technology to address urban heat impacts, then in that context, we need to think about how that technology is going to be used by certain communities. Can they afford it or not? So the human-centric solution means it has to be geared for that. And that leads me to this aspect. As we think about replicability and reproducibility, it seems now in the world of AI, we are not discussing it anymore, which was a big topic a couple of years ago and has been a big topic in the area in research and development, that in the world of AI, how do we address replicability and reproducibility of the products? Because Geo AI is perfectly fine as we use LLMs and generate different products. Can I rely on them? Because I don't have an understanding what models and data sets were used to develop those products, which makes it very difficult to be used and replicated when you don't have an understanding of the underlying data sets. When we use different data, do we have an understanding of the provenance of those data sets? If a lot of data that we are using are synthetic data sets and generated by using AI, then the provenance is kind of flaky. In that context, can I use those data sets to develop and will the models be relevant and reliable? And then, of course, the multiscalar nature of data, which has been a question all the time, because these three topics add a lot of uncertainties to my model, which means how reliable the model are going to be from a stakeholder perspective and how reliable are the data sets. I'm going to stop it there and would be happy to take questions and to discuss what is the path forward that we should be following in order to ensure that the data sets are somehow going to be trusted, not just are being created willy-nilly the way we are using AI nowadays.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bandana. Very timely and interesting talks. You brought up a really great number of points there, and I think that would be good to follow up on the discussions. I'll just quickly jump into our slides, and then we can go ahead and start the discussion. But let me, oh my goodness, all these windows. We get that up and running. Okay. All right. So now let's jump into the Trusted Data Now initiative. I think, Bandana, thank you for setting us up really nicely for a discussion on this. So the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster has been working on this for a couple of years now, but we've been discussing trusted data for as long as I can remember. So as Dave mentioned in his introduction to the topic, what we want to collect and make available is trusted and authoritative data that are easily accessible, timely, interoperable, easily understood, easily communicated, and trusted. And we want to make this easy enough that a child could do it. I will again encourage you to sign into the session notes because we've provided a space down past all of the logistical information for you to share your thoughts on these issues. And we encourage and do indeed actively ask you to contribute to that document if you have any thoughts. So we have been working for a number of years, as I mentioned, and the first step that we took in trying to collect information was we just made a Google spreadsheet, and we had our colleagues, people that had participated in our cluster telecons and also in our cluster breakouts during the ESIP meetings to please contribute to that spreadsheet. So from that, it has evolved into this wonderful tool that was developed by our 2025 community fellow, JLO. He couldn't join us because he's in job interviews. Good luck and great for him. So, but he did develop this really awesome tool that sits in GitHub, and I'm going to just switch over to that real quick here. Can everybody see this window?
Yeah.
I just wanted to show you the actual active site, and I put a shortened URL in our both our session notes and in our presentation here. But I wanted to show you sort of like an active demo. So Jael basically took all that information in those spreadsheets that we've been compiling over the years and created this wonderful tool that shows the different hazard types, and then the different tools or websites that are available to look at these data. And it also tells you what type it is. So the name of the organization, the type of data, the accessibility, the activity of that site, whether the data archive is active or not, the organization, and then the link. And then also it gives you a status on whether or not you can access that data. And then you can also contribute to this database by using this simple Google form. And you just put in this information. It asks for your email, your name, the type of data or the name of the data source, a quick description, the type of hazard, URL, organization, point of contact. So all of these things are easily submittable via this form, and then it will get processed and reviewed on the back end on the GitHub, and then will be published onto this page for your use. Yeah. So if you want to take a look at this, I did put a shortened URL in our session notes, and it's also in the presentation, but I just wanted to give you a quick look at, the work that we've been doing for at least the last 5 years. And it has culminated into this wonderful tool. So we encourage you to take a look at it, submit any data sources that we've missed, and also encourage you to keep in touch with Dave and I as we continue to develop this tool. So Dave, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about.
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Maggie?
Yes.
Okay, good, because my camera went blank and I don't know why. So it looks, there I am, just imagine a moving picture.
Yes.
So this tool is really fantastic. And, I've been in meetings with people over the years, and they said, innovation, when an innovation gets introduced, it's not a big, huge, it doesn't have to be a big, huge change. It can be a subtle thing that comes along that gets built upon. And I think that this tool that Jael put together is a reflection of that. In that, like Maggie said, we were collecting these URLs and putting them in a spreadsheet and all like that. And Jael looked at this and said, hey, we could make this a little bit more friendly. And what we can do with these data sets is bring them into our environment, our test bed, if you will, where we use GeoCollaborate to load these data sets into a GIS environment and then share these across in real time to other potential users or decision makers in those sectors that we're looking to run these data sets by. And so the real-time collaborative environment allows them to give us immediate feedback. They don't have to know how to load the data. They don't have to know where to get the data. They don't have to know anything. Just have the map on, turn it on with the switch, and they can see the data sets that are being shared. And that really accelerates, and I'll use the word sort of co-development of these data sets. We can give feedback back into agencies. We can give it back into organizations that are putting these data sets together. And this is something in this form that I will likely share with a group. I'm actually in Pennsylvania right now at a all hazards consortium meeting with a whole bunch of emergency managers and private sector organizations to share this capability with them and their GIS teams to say, hey, share your data into here so we can pull that together and look and see if we can find other applications and get this data in front of other users. And, Ben, I loved your presentation, and I have questions, during the session, and also Claire, for you as well. But what we're looking to do, and even if, Maggie shared the link here in the chat, if you have data and you're sitting in the session, boy, we have a couple data sets that I just found out about or that we use all the time that are web services or KMLs or CSVs, please put them in here. And, particularly if they're open. If they require credentials, that's another story. You could put those in, but we'd have to, I don't know if we have a place for notes or anything, but, to get authorization to look at particular data sets, we would need to get that as well if it needs credentials. But we really encourage you to just put data sets in here. Claire, if you have wildfire data sets that are available, it would be great to test these. And we really appreciate everybody coming into the session and certainly watching the recording as well to get your data sets more exposure, tested, or whatever. And we're very appreciative of that.
Yes, definitely. And I think this is the point. I'll just throw up the presentation again. But this is where we'd like to start our discussion. And at this point, I encourage you to ask questions of Claire or Vandana about what they spoke about. Here are a couple of prompts for the discussion if we do happen to run out of things to talk about. But the other thing is that, and I put the session notes up here. I'm sure most of you are logged into that, but we did provide an area down at the bottom for you to add any points of discussion that you'd like to record for posterity so that we can come back and either follow up with you or just share it with the cluster or the ESIP community. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the audience and anybody, the speakers or our chairs or our community fellow. And if you have any questions of us or our speakers, please go ahead. And otherwise, we can just kind of maybe address a few of these questions, but I really doubt that we're going to run out of things to talk about. So I'll go ahead and open it up to everybody, and I'll like monitor the chat, but go ahead and just turn your video and audio on and ask questions. Dave, I know you said you had some questions for Claire and Vandana. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. Or 5 seconds, and then I'll jump in. The first question I have for Claire is that, and I'm going to give you some real world examples here of what we're working on now. We mentioned it just before the session started, but we produce video updates for this group called the All Hazards Consortium, and their weather and impact video. We really focus on impacts. We distribute them through YouTube. The YouTube channel has grown now to about 21 or 22,000 subscribers. And in some cases, when the disaster is big enough or threatening, we'll get close to 1 million views on some of our updates. And what we really want to do is introduce new trusted data sources that can stimulate people's thinking. And these are for primarily emergency managers, private sector owner and operators in like the food, fuel, medical supply, communications, transportation, logistics, railroads. They're all a part of this, and they love the updates. And we're starting to get inquiries, and even here in this emergency management meeting where I am right now, I've been asked twice from 2 of the Western states if we can work with them on putting together wildfire briefings. And so in order to do those wildfire briefings, I want to identify the trusted data sources that are out there, and how can we bring that data into a recorded weather video update that shows graphics and animations and stuff like that. So think about your local broadcast meteorologist. We play that role, and then we present this current situation and what might be coming. So is the Wildfire Commons and your group a good group to work with if we want to evolve something like that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Dave. I would say that one of the key drivers of the Wildfire Commons is to be a listing of trusted data sources and trusted model sources. So when we're incorporating things within the community catalog, these are products that we first look to see that the author is a trusted curator of these products, that they have the authority to share that listing, or if they're recommending that something that's publicly accessible through our federated and federal colleagues, that there's authority behind it that's going to be an active source. So definitely within the Wildfire Commons, I would encourage some look and review there to see, from the conversations you're having, are you seeing those sources listed? And if your colleagues that want to see additional sources that they might tap into today, that they talk to us and we can get those ingested. As far as building out products, I think that it's very much to the point of how do we present this information in a digestible way, but also in a way that's going to be impactful for each audience. We just want to know what's the value that they're seeking. I think it's going to be different per audience type that you've even addressed today. We take a pass at this within the Commons. We have the ability to do curated views of different data and model sources. We've been doing this for the California Wildfire Task Force that is part of the governor's overview of how we treat and manage wildfire within the state. So we have curated data that they're managing, but also accessing in order to be ready and informed. So if that's something that, folks in Idaho, folks in different Western states, or even states that, are now being impacted by fire, would like to see, then that's a nice way to publicly share. This is what's being used in order to train and inform and take next steps appropriately. And I think as far as all hazards, being able to have this broader conversation, there's other great sources that have curated data. DesignSafe is one out of the Texas Advanced Computing Center in UT Austin. They have been doing work within the hazards community and managing data from hazards for decades now. So that might be another collaborating opportunity to connect with that group and be able to build videos related to other hazard types.
Yeah, that sounds great, Claire. I appreciate that. And the interesting thing that we found over the years in working with the All Hazards Consortium is that these group are owners and operators, right? And we're talking about delivering fuel into areas that are running out of fuel because of disasters, and moving utility bucket trucks across the country to get into disaster areas to restore power quicker. And they're not geospatial experts. Right? They are not. That we love it. We'll consume that data and look and see how we can get it into those briefings and explain to them what's going on. But all they want to do, because they're in the heat of the moment, right? They want to watch a short video on what's going on and what can they get a handle on situational awareness. So I think this is great. I wrote the DesignSafe folks down here, and I'll follow up with you on how we might be able to take this further, so you as wildfire experts can help educate me so I can make better decisions on moving forward. How best can we do this? What data can we test? And things like that. And then I'm a big fan of co-developing capability, that has major input from the ultimate users at the very start. So that's great. I appreciate that. So I'm going to register this week for the Commons.
Great.
Bandana, I have a question for you. And I really love the whole idea of the trusted data approach, and of course that's sort of the heart of our initiative here. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned different uses for trusted data, and this was a couple years ago now. We worked in the disaster lifecycle cluster, and it was before the wildfire cluster started. But we worked with the All Hazards Consortium to develop what we call ORL levels, operational readiness levels for data. And boy, the All Hazards Consortium users loved it. DHS loved it. Because it put numbers 1 through 4. We kind of modeled it when Karen Moe was part of the cluster. She was a co-chair for a long time. Modeled it after NASA's TRL levels. When you have TRL, technology readiness levels that evolve. These are ORL levels, and the users wanted them cut down from 9 to 4. And I'm going to put in the chat here, hopefully it's still in my, hopefully you can click on that and see it. And Maggie, I don't know if you can maybe click on it and display it and share your screen. My system's acting a little wonky. Yeah, there you go. So, so this was the ORL model decision tree that was actually, this graphic was produced by a person within the geospatial office at Duke Energy. When we were talking about how to trust data, what numbers can we put next to certain data sets. And I would love for you to take a look at this and see what's missing, because this was really put together. It's a living document, right? This thing can change. And we're just looking for more expertise to say, hey, you forgot about this, or, in our way of trust, this really shouldn't be here. It should be over there. But this product was driven by the users, right? We were just standing on the side as experts saying, oh, okay, all right, you need it verified and trusted. Okay, you want to make sure that any change notification is sent out if data is updated or metadata is. So that's how this all came together. But it would be great to get your fingerprints on this to help evolve it. Because it's been static for the last several, probably 2 to 3 years. And I'm just wondering, boy, what else can be put in here to help? So that's what I wanted to share with you, and just to get some of your input on. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me to take a look at it. And the ORL is similar to what we have in DOE World, the adoption readiness level. So anytime we produce anything, the intent is to can it be easily adopted by different stakeholders? So it's very similar in the thought process, how to do it. I'd be happy to take a look at it. And I think one of the areas where often, at least before I jumped to the national lab sector, I wasn't thinking about it. But what I find is energy sector related data sets and the models are generally not included anywhere, although we do need energy for any kind of service continuity, even when the response and restoration activities are ongoing. So I'd be happy to take a look at it. And thanks for the link to the decision tree and to talk about it. Because as we work with different entities, communities and insurance companies and utilities, that is one area where the question comes up as we think about restoration, response, and resilience and whatnot. energy sector is not often there for whatever reason. And from my understanding, energy sector is not a very simple sector. It's a very complex system, which makes it difficult for everybody to understand, okay, what do I mean? Does it mean just access to having some diesel for my generator, something else? It's not the same thing. And so when we look at the entire grid, then those information can be valuable depending upon what the stakeholder is trying to do, what is the purpose of the stakeholder and what the actions they are taking and how this information can be useful. So I'd be happy to take a look at it and identify some of the data sets. I also want to bring up another point. Energy sector in the US is owned by private entities, which means many of the data sets are in the behind the door kind of situation. They are not publicly accessible. And often that makes it difficult for different communities and different entities to use the data widely. Nevertheless, DOE has funded activities that has allowed generation of many data sets. And because you worked with Duke Energy, I know there are some of the things we were working with through another project. So there are data sets that can be used publicly because they are available publicly. So I can identify some of those as well so that nobody has to rely on utilities. Go to another point. As we think about operational readiness level beyond the private sector aspect of energy related data, which I was going with the provenance and the replicability issue. The other thing is there are 3,000 plus utilities in the US. They own different assets and they maintain them within their territory. So the data products coming out from them are not very standardized as well, which makes it very difficult to just put them together for any kind of analysis, which means the stakeholders, the emergency managers who you work with, and I used to work with them in the academic sector, they need someone who has an understanding of the data set and how to standardize them and how to integrate them with other data sets, the geospatial data sets, to deal with any kind of response planning, resource planning, anything on the ground before and after a disaster event. So there are some of the challenges that are also existing. So in the Trusted Data Initiative, perhaps, I'm not saying let's expand everything, it would be good to identify where some of the challenges are still there, not just having access to the trusted data, but making sure that can be used by whoever is the user group, because not necessarily everybody understands the data, the formatting, what it contains, or have the skill set or the time. To be honest, emergency managers don't tend to have the time when they're dealing with the life-saving situations. So it would be helpful to identify some trusted partners as well who may be able to help out as needed.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I put another link, Maggie, in the chat just to show you in the context of how these ORLs are displayed within this dashboard that are used by the all hazards. See the layer list there on the left-hand side? Those little seals, those little, stickers or whatever on the left-hand side. Their ORL levels for each of those data sets. So the users can actually, it just disappeared now, but you can deploy it, Maggie, if you click on the little arrow on the left-hand side, the menu will pop out. There you go. So those ORL levels are something where, how this evolved was, hey, you know what? NASA might have some data sets that are really useful, but we don't know how often going to be available, or Landsat data is great, but it orbits every 16 days. Or now we have Landsat, we have later versions of Landsat that we have a little bit more frequent data. That might be an ORL 4 or 3, because it's not updated every hour, right? It's not dated. It's not dated like NOAA data or Weather Service data. So that was the thinking behind the ORLs. It's trusted. If it has an ORL number, it's trusted, but the number itself deals more with perhaps latency or relevance to that certain situation, and that's what the group of all hazards owners and operators that's how they're thinking, right? And I'm not saying whether that's right or whether that's wrong, but if we can add more value to that, that would be great. But this is just an operational dashboard and how they see it. So if it doesn't have an ORL number next to it, then they don't trust it as much. But it's up there that they take a look at it or whatever. But and then that's how you get to that chart that I showed. Is you just click on one of those ORL numbers and then the chart displays, so people can see what ORL means.
No, thank you.
Hey, thanks. I'll stop and hopefully we have some other questions from folks.
Thanks, Dave. Those are some really good questions there. Let me go back to slideshow here to share the discussion prompts. Alicia made a great suggestion, and I've copied these over into the session document. And so if you would like to take a moment to respond to these questions just on your own, or if you have any thoughts or perspectives on anything that we've discussed, please feel free to put those in the notes, or raise your hand and I can go ahead and and acknowledge you. But if there's anything anybody would like to add or say or ask, please feel free to do so now. We've got about, I would say, 20 more minutes for the discussion, and then we'll be wrapping up. But I'll open it up for the audience.
Don't be shy.
All right. Well, you know me, so I'll say something. This has me reflecting on a session that was held yesterday where Ben Galuski was talking about work that he's been doing. And sorry, I'm hearing echoing. Ben was talking about
mute.
Ben was talking about work that he's been doing using Anthropic's Claude AI suite. And what he described was pretty mind-boggling to me in terms of how the Claude tools were allowing the development of, I'm not going to use the right term. He had a term that I failed to capture in my notes, but basically packages that know how to access multiple data sets and perform very complex operations and return results back to the user. And Ben, among other things, he suggested that ESEP could potentially begin to collect these, again, packages is not the right term, but these packages that already know how to do, complicated stuff. So reflecting about what we've been talking about here, it seems like there's a lot of potential in this domain to leverage those types of capabilities. So I guess my my comment is to encourage reviewing once the recording is available, reviewing Ben's presentation and kind of exploring, because he made the point, I think we're all seeing it, that space is changing so rapidly, but the set of stuff that he was talking about that he's actually working with was pretty amazing. So, and I think it would be relevant to, this particular arena of actually trying to deliver, near real time actionable information to decision makers. So that's just a comment to throw out.
Yeah, Steve,
Thanks.
That's great. I'm just wondering if you can get a little specific. Do you have any particular example that he showed? Was there something? Because it is intriguing, and I always wonder with AI how much really is trusted. And if you go forth and put together a little algorithm to go get something and calculate things and pull it back, is that accurate? I mean, do you have to go back and do it by hand, right, to verify that that's an accurate?
Well, Ben, he touched on sort of the obvious questions about, well, how do you know that what it's doing is what you want it to do? And again, at kind of the very high level, it sounds like there's pretty good answers. It's still maybe not 100% all the time, but maybe 90% of the time. And Vandana, I'll let you. I could tell you want to cut in, so I'll turn it over to you in a moment. But it was so powerful. So one of the terms that he used that I do remember is skills. You can work with Claude to create skills where Claude now understands how to properly access and manipulate data. But you could also call on multiple skills, to do really complex actions. So I can tell that Vandana knows more about this than I do. So I'm going to stop and turn it over to you, if that's okay.
No, thanks. And I'll give you my answer in both positive and negative side of it. Yes, it does help us to generate a lot of data processing and near real-time outputs when we are getting them from different sources. Often where I get stuck is the accuracy of it. Like you said, the person using the AI skills and the agentic AI side of the implementation, if he or she understands the entire pipeline and the process and the interaction of those data sets, then it makes it easier. Otherwise, we can use AI to produce the output, and I have very little understanding what happened behind the screen. I just have the output. And I think that's where majority of the challenges come along. And one example I will give you, there are climate data sets. We all use the climate data sets because they have forecasted outlooks with SSP pathways, so on and so forth. How often anyone goes and compares the product's quality with some of the meteorological observed data? For one of the projects we are doing it, and we find that it has a lot of bias. And one of the product was created using some of the GenAI implementation because it is looking forward-looking output, not using the physics-based models that climatologists do, but rather using GenAI, a data-driven implementation of it. What happens, it has a lot of biases. At the same time, it does tend to miss out on tail end risks from extreme weather events, which often are the low probability, high consequence events that we need to prepare for. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, there is a positive aspect to it because it makes life easier to churn through large volumes of data and pretty quickly. But at the same time, if we're not cautious and don't understand the processes behind how the data sets were originally produced and what the relationship of those input data sets to generate the output and what is the error margin for the output, then the end user, especially the emergency managers who Dave is working with, will have very little understanding of the uncertainties associated with the outputs. Then the implementation can be very challenging and costly. That's where my problem happens. So we do use, as I said, it's not, I'm a fan of AI, like coming from remote sensing background, we have been using AI for processing images. It just nowadays, I want to take a step back and ask the question, okay, is it accurate enough? Is it reliable? Is it trustworthy? Because I can introduce biases, so the products are going to be geared towards specific communities. That's it. Is it relevant, the output that I'm getting? Those are the questions that I like to ask before just saying 100% I believe it and that's it, I'm going to move on. And the second aspect is understanding how can this be given to anybody so they can use it. They don't have to come to me because as we looked at the image that Dave was saying, it's operational readiness level. That means I just have to hand it over to them. That's it. I'm supposed to be out of the loop. In that case, can they replicate it and reproduce the same results, or some change has to happen? And that would require some investment from both time, skill set, knowledge, and a money part from their end. And do they have it? So if we draw a metric asking these questions and what is needed, then it becomes very complex.
I totally agree with that. Well said. Thank you. And I think Ben covered much of that territory in his presentation. So again, it's probably 20 minutes out of the recording. Pretty interesting to hear what he had to say. They went back and they looked at one of the seminal papers back from 1981 that was talking about the ocean circulation. Yeah, the sort of earliest published paper that related the cycle to weather patterns in the United States, and they were able to partially replicate the paper using Claude, but they also noticed some issues with the paper. And just fascinating stuff. And Dave, you were starting to say something, so I will shut up.
No, I was just thinking, Bandon, as you were talking, that's what scares me the most, is that if you have these decision makers and these folks that we work with, they're not, their decisions are $1 million decisions, right? They're like, yeah, we're going to send 100 bucket trucks, 7 states over to work and respond to this power outage. And, if they're making decisions on, results that they have no idea how it's produced and how it comes out or whatever, then that really concerns me, because then, there could be all sorts of cascading events that get responded to that may or may not happen, or whatever. So it's and we had talks in ESIP not too long ago. Steve, I remember you're one of them. You ran a session. Was that in Asheville, where you had people come in and you're just going to work with ChatGPT, right?
I think that was Asheville, the relatively early days of the ChatGPT hype. Right, it was a fun session, but early days. It
was a fun session, but look how far it's come. And what I really am concerned about is how fast it's taking off, and how people think that it's all accurate, whatever they type in.
Yeah. So what this is bringing me to, and I hadn't thought about it this way before, but you've got trusted data that we've discussed. This would be kind of a higher level of trusted tools that work with the trusted data. So maybe that's a future thing to think about, is trusted tools, or, that's not necessarily the best term, but where they have been reasonably thoroughly vetted by experts who do understand the whole pipeline and have said, yes, we can trust this tool. And I see Claire has her hand up.
Carla is trying. I can't figure out how to put my hand up, so put me in the queue if somebody wants to say something.
Okay. Thank you, Carla. I'll have you go right after me. I was just going to express that this is what we're doing with the Wildfire Commons, especially on the fire sliver of disasters. We are looking at how have we listed within the community the ability to identify what's trusted as far as a product, a model, data source, and then we're taking that next step with our marketplace and also within the Fire Forge to enable people to take those trusted solutions, innovate a bit more towards a trusted product, but also highlight the products that are within the community and say, community, please tell us as well what products are missing that you utilize. What products do you recommend? So is it a community favorite, or do we need more information from this product in order to trust it better? So demystifying that black box that was described before, right, of, we're concerned about not knowing how it was trained, concerned about not knowing what data was used in order to build the analysis, so we don't have biases that we're unaware of. So this is all very crucial to the work that we're doing within the Wildfire Commons, and, very happy to hear this conversation. But Carla, I know you've been working hard, so I'll pass it to you.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a little bit orthogonal. I am in education. My background is in learning and instructional technology, but I'm always in this thinking about data, thinking about what we need to help K-12 students understand and do with data at that level, so that throughout their lives, they have a certain set of data skills And it was refreshing to hear that we're still thinking about temporal and spatial scales. In 2003, I actually got my first NSF grant. It never happens when you write it the first time, but I did it. It was called Eyes in the Sky, and it taught teachers and students how to use GIS. And at that time, it was considered revolutionary. This is 2003. Nobody was really using it with kids. But the bottom line was we wanted teachers and kids, and even today, to use actual scientific data. In education, we tend to dummy down data sets, get a cleaned up little data set, make up an activity, and they do that in the classroom. And that misses out on all the richnesses of uncertainty, variability. So this really isn't a question, it's just a comment that as I go through these sessions, I'm thinking about what is the applicability and how could we get real-time data. And in some cases, yes, the kids, maybe they can be at the same level of the end user who doesn't have that understanding. But I think it's much more powerful if throughout the K-12 curriculum, and there's a group of folks working on K-12 data science standards that are thinking about these things, like what can you do at kindergarten, at 6th grade, at 9th grade, that builds this whole trajectory. Data is very complex. And ultimately, what I want, and many of us do, is for people to make data-based decisions, which does really require some understanding of data, I would think, to get to that level of making data-based decisions. So I will stop talking.
Vandana, I see your hand up. I'll invite you to make a comment, and then we'll have you speak and maybe take one more question from the audience, and then we'll go ahead and do the wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to all the points that have been mentioned. And yes, we need to understand the data sets. We also need to understand the processes, the physics-based implementation. The data-driven implementation is perfectly fine. As we have discussed, there can be error in the data, which means the processes need to understand how the systems interact across space and time. So one or the other is not going to give us a solution that is very reliable, relevant. I also wanted to bring out 2 points. LLM is perfectly fine. LLM is a text-based implementation. It is large language models, but the data sets that we use in the geospatial world are spatial and temporal. They contain information in a different format. They are not text. So thinking LLM can solve all the problem is a very misguided notion where people need to understand the differences, and even the vision-based implementation can have their issues. So an awareness is needed. Now we are running so fast ahead that often people don't understand the distinguishing features of these data sets, not just the volume or the formatting of it. Then another issue that has been more and more coming up in the discussion is when I say trusted data because the data comes from XYZ, we can inject noise into the data, which can be very minute that you can't even recognize through naked eye, but the model is going to throw off. And I'll give you one example. There was an article where they were discussing the neural net was running to categorize pandas, but one of the images has a very slight noise that you can't even see it, but the neural net categorized the panda as a bison. Imagine that part. And any error we can have in the training data through noise injection, or there is noise introduced into the system during a hacking process, is going to have the data with so much of error, although it comes from a trusted source. Not knowing the injection of any kind of noise can have erroneous products. So nowadays we have to be aware of that aspect as well. The use of GenAI has made it such it is possible to introduce such kind of noise into a data stream even if it comes from a trusted source. So we need to also think about that part. So the challenge that we have to face now is not just the trusted data, but as Steve said, thinking about trusted models, but also taking a step back to understand, is my data is really trusted at different time frame because of the evolution of GenAI, and anybody can use it and introduce noise into the signal.
That's a great point. Thank you, Bandana. Is there one more burning question or comment from our audience? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and wrap up so I don't keep you over into the break.
Just want to make one quick comment, Maggie, and that is Bandana and Claire, are you guys aware of any materials, any presentation that is really a cautionary tale in having people who are not experts in AI or maybe haven't even processed a piece of data in their life to be very cautious about using AI? Is there anything out there that we might be able to review or maybe suggest to groups? I'm thinking of, the All Hazards Consortium here. I mean, none of these folks, they're amazed at AI, but, half of them use it probably like Google, take me from one place to another, and give me directions that they could learn a little bit more about the uncertainties in AI.
Yes, we had a paper that came out a couple of years ago in the context of energy sector, but there are some manuscripts that are looking at the ethical implications and the uncertainties of AI, and I definitely will pull out that manuscript and a few other manuscripts focusing on this. And there is a center as well that specifically looks at the ethical aspects of AI usage and especially using climatic data. So I'll share all the information, Dave, with you and Maggie, so you can post it on ESA. But there are manuscripts of cautionary tales and research actively being produced to address and develop trustworthy AI and what to look out for and so on and so forth.
Yeah, maybe to add to that statement, there's a lot of great work that's coming out of this group as well for national academies, thinking about the engineering practices. So not only highlighting what are the risks to reward, as cautionary tales, but thinking about what are the best practices that have been proven and continue to be reviewed, because I think that's also really key. We can't just, bias ourselves with cautionary tales. We also have to highlight what's the good science, the good work that's being done to help inform people that are seeking for these solutions, but just really in need of that guidance and that good example.
That's great. Thank you so much, both of you. Maggie, take it away.
Sure thing. All right. I'll get to the wrap up portion of the presentation here if I can. Okay. So as we've mentioned over and over, we really would appreciate your input into the Trusted Data Now initiative, and feel free to add web services or data that you know about into the tool. There is the shortened link again. All of this stuff is also in our session document. And then I just wanted to bring your attention to another session that's happening this afternoon that actually is talking about hazard risk assessment and using AI as part of these collaborations. So that is at 1:30 p.m. today. I've put the link here, but I do encourage you to take part in that discussion. I think it will kind of dovetail in very nicely with our discussion this morning, this morning. And then just to end the session and this presentation, I wanted to invite everyone to participate in our monthly telecon. I believe we changed it to 2 p.m. Eastern, first Thursday of the month.
Yes,
but
we
don't
did.
quote me on it. Okay. All right, good. And I've listed here our email addresses, and please do feel free to join our email list. And Douglas and Dave, if you want to give me the information for the wildfire cluster, then I will put that in the session document as well. I'm sorry, I completely spaced that we were kind of co-sponsoring this, but
yeah, no worries, Maggie, no worries at all.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to again thank Claire and Bandana for joining us today, and providing some really great presentations and discussion. I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. I again encourage you to please share your thoughts on the session document. And it looks like I am almost on time here. So I will release you to your break. And thanks again for attending our session.